Bonjour et bienvenue. This is Avec Math, the podcast that explores the journey of the founders, the inventors, the disruptors, the entrepreneurs who are shaping the world of digital advertising and making this one of the most exciting, most fast-moving industry in the world. Today, my guest needs probably no introduction. He's a member of the little but mighty Canadian ad tech mafia in New York City. He was the founder of not one, but two companies over the past 20 years who shaped what our industry looks like today. He's also been, over the past 10 years now, 8 years, one of the most prolific investor in the world of ad tech. And also, over this time, probably one of the most passionate person that you can meet in this industry, someone who's never short of big ideas and never shy to kind of share them with you late in the night, whether it's in Possible or in Cannes. Zawadzki, bienvenue avec Matt.
Oh, couldn't be more delighted. This is great. This is what a format.
All right. So we met. I don't know if you remember that. I do. We met in Cannes on the terrace of the MediaMath suite, June 2019. I had darker hair at the time. You haven't changed. I don't know how you do that. And I was meeting the president of MediaMath. I was also meeting the GP of Math Capital, which was the new-ish, I think, venture fund that you had started alongside MediaMath, exactly, and who became now Aperiam, right, with Eric and Corey. And I want to start with the end, right, with like the investment kind of trajectory, the what you've done with Aperiam and Math Capital, and then Aperiam over the past what is it, 8-9 years now?
Yep, 8 years.
What are you looking for in a founder? What makes a successful ad tech digital marketing founder for you, or successful company founders, maybe plural?
Other than incredibly charismatic, tall French, no. That's a good start, actually. So look, I mean, I think we do start with market, right? So part of what characterizes, I think, Aperiam is, we're all former founder operators, senior executives in businesses in the space.
Best deal flow ever.
Yeah, but I think also have been on the inside and actually trying to do the work and shaping teams and figuring out partnerships and creating demand channels, et cetera, et cetera. So we've sort of been on the inside of what it's like to be growing and sort of shaping companies and shaping the industry inside of advertising. And so I think we bring some of that. We are domain focused or domain obsessed, to your point, where we're not trying to be generalist VCs, right? We're trying to figure out, hey, we understand this market reasonably well, and we try to keep our skills sharp enough and our network sharp enough to actually be able to be helpful. And so the emphasis tends to be on, we start with where is the market going, and then two is what teams have identified a particular vector, a particular pocket that seems broadly relevant, and I'll come back to broadly relevant in a second. And then we actually really focused on team, right? Because certainly in the early stage, the first idea, the thing that you get the PowerPoint on, if 30% of it remains intact for the next 2 years, you're kind of lucky.
Don't pull back those business plans from 2019, please.
Right? So you're just looking...
Things are going to change.
Things are going to change, right? Yeah. And
you say, sorry, I'm cutting you off. You say teams.
Yes.
Not people, individual. Have you bet on individual entrepreneurs before?
We have, yeah. We've had, one founder and a PowerPoint for sure.
That feels like, it's hard to do with co-founders already. On your own. Like, to me, it feels like an insurmountable task. I wouldn't have been able to start 85 without a strong kind of co-founder who could be like a sounding board. I don't know, is that your experience as well? Do you see that as a harder path, or?
Your next company, you could just send us an email and we'll be like, great, we're behind you. Right.
Okay.
Omar, a good example, right? We've, backed him a number of times.
Second time, third time founder, you know what you're doing.
You know what you're doing, right? Yeah. They understand how to build a business. They can navigate the market. They can, get it to a successful exit. They can assemble the people around them, et cetera, et cetera. In most cases, we're meeting with people at the seed and, pre-seed, seed, and A stage, where there is a full team, right? Or at least, full, 6 to 8 people, right? And you are evaluating team. some bias to people with some experience, but not slaves to it, right? You want people that sometimes the best jazz pianists are ones that are classically trained, and then they know how to go off script, right? So you want some of that. So you're looking for some pedigree. It doesn't necessarily bias toward simply the the Googles and the Metas and whatnot. Sometimes those experiences are like, okay, like you could do that there, but you could do that when you've got people come to you and there's the bestseller at Google. You're like, well, was it you or was it the product, right? So some appreciation for either the customers that they'll be selling into, the brand and the agency community, for example, in our world, some appreciation of being able to either navigate the kind of the Lumascape, the open internet, or having been inside of some of the walled gardens. You're just kind of looking for a tapestry, and a little bit like the college class, right? It's not necessarily the parts, but how does the whole come together? And you do get some of that sense too in some of the traditional cadences of partner meetings where you get the the full team and they come in on a Monday and you have a conversation and you get to see some of that team dynamic. But yeah, and really what you're looking for is some of the experience. You're looking for some of the passion as well, right? Do you do you have an idea of where this thing is going to go? And then you're trying to ferret out some of the grit, right? Some of the teams that we've sort of said no to is like, not sure that team is going to stay together, right? Like, possible that upon first adversity or first better opportunity somewhere else, they're going to be off doing something else, which is another reason. Like, you might have all the right ingredients, but if you're not going to stick through the couple of punches you're going to get along the way, inevitably, that also doesn't lead to a great investment. So I will say we're trying to be a little bit more, quite a bit more intentional. Like, AI is providing a nice little opportunity to take meat-based heuristics and translate them into context for machines. And we're starting to push in that direction as well, of being like, all right, how do we come to consensus around a particular investment, and how do we encode that such that we don't have to ask the same 43 questions that we always ask. We can perhaps let the machines do it for us and come up with new questions to ask to ferret out more of this sort of information at the precursor to an actual investment.
Well, there's a recipe. There's a formula.
Certainly, there's some. Right now, I would call it we're cooks. We're not bakers. So there's a little bit of art to the science, but as much as we can productize and sort of formalize that, I think it'd be great.
And what I'm sorry, that's maybe like a kind of going off a tangent, but like, what is it going to mean? Like, will you have like a chat bot that founders will be able to chat with? To that build filtered or because I mean the meeting on the terrace was pretty sweet. Like I would be ashamed for people not to have that first experience with your Eric and
100%. And so there's got to be the right mix, right?
Yeah.
The reality right now is that the circa 2026, like the inflow of new opportunities is tremendous. Right, we are at a particularly sort of beckoned time of people starting things up because market's changing, market's huge, and again, AI is a massive accelerator to lots of things. So and then I think the traditional path of rising up inside of an organization is also getting less attractive. So we're just seeing a lot of startups. Right, it's easier to start and build right now than it was even 5 years ago, and so you do have to professionalize the process to some extent. There's something about I remember this used to be a truism back in my first roles, like, don't ever work with somebody that you haven't broken bread with, right? So I think there probably is a human in the loop check there of like, sit down together, have a meal together, have a conversation, like, see if that works. So I think that's really important. And then to your point about the rooftop meeting, like, that was actually our first meeting, right? And you want to stay exposed to that as well. So, thank God we have cans. Thank God we've got, possibles, et cetera. And you have that sort of forced serendipity all in one place. So it'll be an interesting, again, human AI mix in venture as it is in all things. But yeah, I agree with you. Don't lose the human part.
It's exciting. I mean, our industry is 26, 27 years old now, right? And it feels like it's never slowing down.
No, it's
right? You're tired as well? No, but it's funny.
Energized by the chaos.
Energized, yeah. It is energizing. It's just like, it feels like, there is we're maturing a bit, right? There's consolidation in some areas, like bigger player emerge, but then there's always this new wave of like, okay, everything's changing now, and like any established position is up for grab. Even like Google is challenged by OpenAI, right?
Yep.
So it's like, it doesn't matter, like how come, like, again, back to the founders, like, what do you need to be, what do you need to have to be able to survive this kind of crazy kind of constant reinvention that's happening, right? Like it feels, for me, I've got this image of like bombs kind of falling, right? And we've had a number of the course of the past, 10 years of ID5, right? With like, the advertising ID consortium, where like everybody's going to put their ID together. Like, oh shit, we're can I say we're fucked on the pod? Probably not, but anyway, it's French.
It's your pod.
It's my pod. Yeah, okay. They're like, oh, okay, so that's going to be an issue. And then like, the cookie thing, and like, and it's just like there are bombs, right, falling right and left. And you're like, okay, I need to avoid the bombs. So my core competence is like, I need to know where the bomb's going to fall, to estimate the bomb, so like I can point the company in those kind of massive kind of waves of innovation, right? They feel like bombs because they're existential threats.
Yep.
And the smaller you are, the more existential the threat. How can you navigate that? Like, what's this resilience? Is it like you need to be crazy? You need like.
I was thinking about it as you were saying, and I was going to ask you the question. As you were saying what you were saying, of course, it was ringing true. I used to say that building a business in this space was running a marathon over a minefield at just below a sprint's pace, right? And having said that, and when you went through your like litany of bomb references, I started smiling a little bit. And so I do think you have to be a little insane. I do think you have to find that environment like energizing as opposed to enervating. You probably don't need to be this insane, right? There's probably you're probably better at it.
There's a level of insanity that is like
you want to be like
good enough
7, right? And then find that sort of an energizing market as opposed to something that does feel a little bit more slower and plodding, I suppose. Although again, I don't think any industry is right now. I do think we're in for every industry is in a process of massive disruption.
Sure.
So I think we're all geared for it. I think entrepreneurs are geared well for the current world, perhaps better. Long story short, I think you got to be a little bit insane. You've got to kind of lean into that with some, grit and resilience. And then I tend to use the, Nassim Taleb anti-fragile, right? In the best case, right, you've got organizations that aren't just, resilient, but they're anti-fragile, that they, take a moment of adversity. Something might have happened in the world this week, right? Publicis might have bought LiveRamp. Right? You may have woken up and said, "Oh, it's time," and gotten a little excited, right? And so you've got to find these moments of disruption and be like, "Okay, great. How are we going to navigate? How are we going to attack?" And then how do you bring people with you? By the way, which is also a big part of it.
It's a great segue into my second card about company culture, because I think one of the way you maintain this resilience is by making sure the organization itself it can't just be like on one person or like one leadership team, right? The organization itself has to be resilient, and so that points to company culture. It's a bit of a pet peeve of mine. I'm really fascinated by this because I think building a company is building something that's much bigger than you, and that has to survive you eventually, and the culture is really what defines it. And I can't think of many examples of strong company culture, distinctive company culture than MediaMath. And so I wanted to kind of pick your brain about like this notion that like when you build a company, and I did a No Point Dexter, maybe that was also a strong company culture. But like when you think about building a company, building a culture, getting people to follow. I mean, when you start a business, you need to get investors to believe in you and to follow you. You need to get employees to believe in you and to follow you. You need to get clients to believe in you and to follow you, because you can't just sell on like actual results. There has to be an element of like evangelism at the beginning and like trust and like, okay, like that sounds smart. Let's see what it does, right? So part of that is like founder personality, CEO personality, whatever. And part of it is like also like the fabric that you built in the company. How do you, well, maybe, moving off from the Aperiam topic, but like, how do you think about this? Do you think about this as just like it comes naturally? And like, there are some people who are charismatic, who are like, who people want to follow, and there are others who are just going to struggle. And so that's the difference? Or is there more like
I was going to
recipe
say,
to it?
I might tie it back to ID5 and Aperiam for a second, because this will become a little more of an interview of you, because I think you've also built an amazing company culture, and it's been commented on sort of in some of the work with our Aperiam fellow stuff, for example. Last year, we were sort of embedding, AI fellows into portfolio companies, and a lot of what Neddy's been doing around some of the talent. He's had, more exposure into sort of the day-to-day. But I think you are one of the sort of founder CEOs that has been more intentional about how to build a culture, I think, than many, and have developed a great one as a result. I'm a little bit more of like the dumb animal version of it, and benefited from the partners that I've founded the company with. So I think about Jenna and Eric and Greg and what have you, and I see Jenna fairly regularly, but the people around had much more intentionality, in the sense of like there was a common core. And I think that kind of sort of DNA and sort of approach and whatnot did cascade. And as the company grew, there were moments in which we really thought about, okay, what are the elements of the kind of the MediaMath way? Smart, passionate, nice, for example, were some of the adjectives that we wanted to retain, and then where were elements where we kind of needed to bring different types of elements into the equation while maintaining the original. My own instincts were not necessarily to be as systematic about it, but I really appreciate the people around me who are systems thinkers around things like culture, and so just enable them to be great, and that was that, right? And maybe that was the only thing that I brought to the table, was like...
but it's recognizing that it's important, and making sure people who are focused on building this have like the
only been good at a little bit of seeing the future and hiring and marrying above my station, and recognizing that. So yes, that's it.
So it's not just about the hair. You got to work for it.
Got to work for it.
One of the things that I'm sure you must be super proud of, that I would be super proud of if I was in your shoe, is the alumni network.
Totally.
Right. There's a handful of like great kind of alumni, like, diasporas. You've got the Rubicon diaspora, you've got the advertising.com, the DoubleClick, right? There's like a bunch of like maybe a handful of companies, AppNexus, right? Who've almost like seeded, right? Like a bunch of super smart people, and then led them on to build their own business. And how do you think about that? What do you think in the MediaMath culture has been critical into getting this type of person in, and then out and into the world with like their own ideas and their own businesses?
Yeah, again, I think the folks that were sort of more intentional. What is it? Really look for some of those qualities, like that smart, passionate, and nice, like or kind. That word's the hardest one, I think, to really land.
Yeah.
There's something about the trust and transparency. Like you're generally interacting with other people with a presumption that there's a win-win relationship possible, and there's a long-term orientation as opposed to a transactional one and what have you. So I think the culture was generally one where people felt comfortable like walking across the hall and asking a question, and the other person every once in a while would say it's in the wiki or it's in Jira, but generally trying to be helpful in their interactions, right? I think that, and then often just letting people go figure out what's next. Like if you're have that core DNA of people that are trying to do the right thing, and they're trying to develop both the organization around them and themselves, and generally have positive interactions with each other, then there's lots of roles that are possible inside of an organization. So we ended up having people that moved around a lot geographically. We had people that moved from department to department a lot, right? Hey, I want to try product, or I'm engineering and I want to get forward deployed, or I'm what is a selling thing, right? And you sort of discover those strengths or those appetites in people, and kind of encourage them to do that. a lot of our foreign offices were sort of started by, people in Office A moving to Office B.
Yep.
And, founders would go from New York to London, and then some subset of that team would start up Singapore and would do a stint in Chicago, right? And that kind of commingling of, sort of experience and kind of tenure and new, I think was really, really important. And then when people left, they brought that with them. And so there were stories that I was the most proud of where, one I heard there was a group call with, somebody was at Google and somebody else was at Amazon and somebody was at an agency, and they were, working on some, assume some of the proper nouns there weren't totally accurate, but let's, 3 or 4, different organizations coming together. And they realized that 80% of the people on the call were were mathletes, were MediaMathers. And you could, the thing that they shared was like there was this palpable sense of relief that they could just speak openly to the counterparty, and it was like, okay, let's just drop the games, let's go. Here's where we got to get to, let's go. And the meeting went swimmingly well, and the product got built, and the problem got solved, and what have you. Mm-hmm. And those stories I find great because that's the durability of the network.
That's the legacy.
Yeah,
that's the legacy.
Yeah.
Let's talk about MediaMath. A lot has been said about the rise and the fall of MediaMath.
Yes, indeed.
At the time, the biggest independent DSP, probably the inventor of the DSP category, right? If you look back at it, close to 1,000 employees at some point at the peak, hundreds of millions in revenue, rumored to be acquired for $1 billion. I'm sure it's not your favorite topic to talk about, but like the press has been talking about it for you, and I don't think we've ever heard your side of the story. So. Paul's got this quote from me here from Tony Soprano. You got no fucking idea what it's like to be number one. I love that quote. What happened and what did the press get wrong? Is it the pressure of being number one? Is it like what?
Oh, shit. How much time do we have for this podcast?
We've booked the studio for a long time. You're good.
Great. Where do we start? Look, what was written about the press? Had some exit opportunities, right? That I look back and I'm like, oh, that would have been a good idea.
Yeah.
Right.
Hindsight 2020.
Hindsight 2020. Right. So there was a moment with the folks at Bain Capital, and that was the one where I remember I made the choice. I was like, there's more room in the in the business and in the sort of opportunity here to sort of keep going. And that one was the one where I look back like, that was an exit opportunity to what ultimately happened that I shouldn't take and didn't. People talk about the IBM, and that was one I was all in. Like I was like, I couldn't have had a bigger crush on this like 100-year-old technology organization that's managed to reinvent itself over and over across cycles, and to be able to unlock sort of a entity with that type of connectivity across the Fortune 2000 and early at Watson and what have you, and that one was a management sort of turnover that at IBM that ultimately sort of queered that opportunity, and then realized that in order to keep evolving the business, I did need to sort of change the plane while it was in the air. Right. The same what got you here won't necessarily get you there. Was going to do it. So I had one problem and one opportunity happening at the same time around 2017, 2018. And on one hand, I had a Series B investor, so lead investor for our Series B financing, that was part of a public VC. There's only 2 of those in the world. And it was like the worst of all worlds, right? It was a venture capital firm with all of its idiosyncracies. That was also a public company with all of
the public market and everything.
Idiosyncrasies. Yeah. So it was in wind down mode, and basically their stock at the time was trading as MediaMath plus everything else. So the amount of scrutiny at Safeguard Scientifics, and I think the other part of me not having said anything was, for 3 years I was technically not able to, so I just didn't say anything, and again let the the story be written by the victors that became the losers. But when I wanted to get Safeguard out and needed to raise enough capital in order to engineer that, I was like, look, if I'm going to go through the process of raising capital, let's raise enough to go do something growth oriented, right? So let's find a partner that's going to put in a meaningful amount of capital and let us sort of take the next stage of the evolution. And basically the thesis was bring in private equity, buy either IPONWeb or Rubicon, and really mash these two businesses up into a fully end-to-end stack, but organized around the very MediaMathy principles, a la Source, and full transparency and sort of a marketplace that respected the principles on both sides, as opposed to gobbled up all the margin in the middle. A very Canadian approach to building an ad tech company and a marketplace. And so right idea, wrong execution, and by wrong execution I mean wrong partner. So, brought in a private equity partner. I was a little bit seduced by the number and here's how this could go, and had a lot of media assets that were theoretically going to be, could have been valuable. Didn't spend enough time doing the homework of who I was sort of inviting into the boardroom and onto the cap stack. And that ultimately was like kind of let the fox in the hen house. They had never, I think they may have had one or two other minority investments. We were one of the very few. I'm a pretty stubborn founder. I think most founders are. I think I'm Polish plus stubborn founder, having kind of 1 of 7 board seats. What ultimately happened was, and this predated COVID to some extent, but I in the organization was just not responding in the way that he wanted. Right, we weren't doing the cost cutting, the financial engineering. We were still a growth oriented business.
The PE mindset was not aligned with the growth kind of mindset that you wanted to have for the business.
Well put.
Yeah.
Like we were still in a place where we needed to make big moves.
Yeah.
And that's another part about ad tech in particular, right? It's not one that rewards people for sitting still.
Yeah.
Right. You kind of have to keep evolving or you die. It's like a shark, right?
If you don't stay in the ocean. If you don't run, if you don't move forward, you die. Yeah.
That's it. And so, was working to engineer one of these two deals. They technically had they weren't required to invest the second tranche. So they invested the first tranche in order to clear out the first investor. They did not invest the tranche to make the transformative acquisition while the company was in flight. So then I basically went back to the drawing board and said, okay, I got to do this organically. So I got to bring in sort of new leadership. And so I would say the company basically had 3 successive eras. It had sort of because you mentioned you were going to talk about this. So I was like, how would I characterize the 3 eras of MediaMath? And I think one was kind of the startup phase and the scale phase and then the shit phase. And so I didn't know I was in the shit phase at the time, but by this moment, but I clearly was. So then couldn't make the big acquisition. So then said, okay, I got to do this organically. Realized I was really in trouble when they blocked another sort of strategic vector. We were going to buy Thunder, which was an integrated DCO ad server. And I was like, that's another cool vector that we could go down. It's basically the Media Ocean flash talking play. And if you could have an integrated DSP with creative, with canonical ad serving where you kind of own the measurement, it was another way through. And they blocked that on a technicality. It didn't require their capital, but they had
it wasn't as huge an acquisition as a Rubicon or an Aperiam Ventures.
It was a pickup.
Right?
It was on balance sheet capital, and that's when I realized I was in trouble. Like it wasn't just I couldn't grow, but I also couldn't evolve. Like I was like, and the point was to like a little bit of teach me a lesson. Like we are in charge here, whether the paper says it or not, right? And I was like, okay, all right, that's a move. And again,
how do you just taking a break here? I'm going to let you kind of take a breath. How do you react? So you're a founder, it's your baby, it's your company. It's not your baby, it's your company, right? It still is, even though there's 1,000 people, right? You're stubborn, you're Polish, right? And you got someone at the boardroom saying like, nah, you can't really do what you want. How do you react to that? How do you...
That's my Achilles heel. Like I'm bad at the boardroom navigations and I'm not a brawler. You know what I mean? I'm definitely a growth-minded collaborator. And so as soon as I've got somebody, in the business in that way that is, sharp-elbowed and hostile, I don't have the moves for it. And I've kind of I've learned that over time, right? And so I didn't react. I don't think I did it well, right? I needed to muscle up, I think. Obviously, best move was keep them out entirely. Second best move was find an avenue to get them out quickly. The one where they were in the business and staying in the business was ultimately what, killed me first, and then 18 months later killed the business, right? And I'll tell more about the dynamics of sort of that story, because I learned PE like 701, like I'm sure some of the charters of the world, or some of the bigger, more high profile sort of public private stuff is a different class yet of PE. But I was up against like Apollo trained, private equity with all of the tools that they have at their disposal, and it is ferocious. Like it's one of the things that's motivated me as an investor to be like, not that.
Yeah.
Right. Like
the opposite.
The opposite, like quite literally. So in any case, didn't deal with it well. I wasn't doing as much of the pre-working of the board and I like being in the coalface. I like being an operator. I like the team. I like the clients. I like the partners. I like the work. Right. And so the proportion of my time that was spent in not just cap table and board management, but like actively in politics at that level, got to the point where I was like, it was insane. It was truly like I was barely sleeping. I was waking up in the morning. I was like, oh, today is going to be another fight, and it just felt like it was 4 to 5 years of that, punctuated by COVID. And so, COVID was where it went from this is really hard to ultimately this is going to be impossible, and I just didn't know it. And when COVID happened, the PE in question had a bunch of, shit across their portfolio. So, they, like anything else, were sort of diversified. And so they started having other companies that were going to zero. So, we lost, like most ad tech companies, I think 30% of, spend/revenue basically
overnight.
Immediately in sort of the March, April timeframe. And they basically went to all of their portfolio companies and said, sell, right? Because we're getting capital calls from our LPs or being told they're not going to fund the next capital call. And so basically they were trying to generate liquidity in their portfolio. I responded in my very stubborn founder Polish way and said, no, like now is not the time to sell an ad tech business to people on Zoom when we're down 30% and no one knows which way is up. Like, I didn't know it was going to be a V-shaped recovery, but ads are pretty resilient, and you're like, okay, unless this is heat death of the universe, we're going to get to the other side of this. And so the only move was to get back to work and sort of scale. And it's at that point they went hostile. So they basically went and said the way to engineer control over the business was to block our access to working capital. And so we had a line with Goldman Sachs that was, then I think 2.5 years mature out of a 4-year instrument.
Window, yep.
And basically the way that our private equity agreement or our financing docs were engineered was that a default under the working capital line triggered a cross default in our private equity line. So what they were doing was playing for the downside. So if they could do enough things that would create a breach of our working capital, then they could take control of the business. If they could take control of the business, they could wipe out the equity. They could ultimately become the owners and go from small minority to majority owners. And they just had a script. Like they had in case of fire, break glass. Here's what we do. And they started deploying those things. And I was a naive, like, I'm a business builder.
Who needs enemies when you've got friends like that, right?
It was crazy. It was crazy. So the whole company just basically turned inwards. It just became like obsessed with, focused on survival and obsessed with itself. And it was also a period where I was, I'm currently uncomfortable with, sort of talking about it openly for no particular reason. But I should have been more vocal. Like I should have told more of the team what was going on. I should have told the press what was going on. I should have told, clients and partners what was going on. Only because I think, the sunlight's the best disinfectant. And I tried to, navigate it internally, and I was doing all sorts of crazy things. Like I was, running around trying to find alternative sources of working capital, right? Can I find, ultimately what we did find a replacement working capital line, traditional ABL, and they sued the company in order to block our ability to move to a line that was cheaper, more flexible with more availability. And we spent, just after COVID, 8 months, $800,000 defending our right to refinance our financing. And we prevailed.
From your investors?
From our investor. And we went to the vice chairman of the Chancellery Board in Delaware, and the judge said, MediaMath has the right to refinance its working capital. And my nuanced legal reasoning for this is because I read the contract. There's no claim, there's no cause. They just decided to launch a spurious lawsuit. What it did was it ran out 8 months of the clock.
Cost almost $1 million.
Cost $1 million. The counterparty was like, oof, I'm not going to get into this situation.
Yeah.
Like, you guys deal with your family stuff. I'm not going to refinance into a hostile warring group. And then the guy quite literally put his arm around me, and we prevailed. And I was like, we won. Like, again, signs of my naivete. And I think at this point it may have been a physical put his arm around me, although it was a period of time where we weren't talking. And he basically, he said, the words were literally, have you ever heard of an appeal? And I was like, oh shit, this is another 2 years. I can't get out of this thing. Like, I'm stuck. I'm quite literally stuck. So that's when I went down this route of, basically alternative forms of lending. So could we sell our receivables, right? Well, no, Goldman requires, releases in order to do that. Can I partner with our partners in order to change payment terms into sort of extended periods such that we didn't have the upside down nature of agencies paying slower than our supply chain was expected to be paid. And I basically managed this dance for 18 months during the most hostile of it, until, without an event of default, until the expiration of the line, which as soon as you got to the end of the line without a replacement facility, it was inherently an event of default. And so they were just playing out the clock, and I was, running around doing all my, work, and ultimately there's a board meeting, and it was like, that's it. There's an event of default. We're taking control. That's that. And so that was the kind of the end of my line. And then in 2021, this is the end of 21, quite literally, and they took over the business. So, they had a plan. One of the board members, stepped in as CEO. And then I basically stepped away, and I was like, the only way to maintain sanity is to not be involved, right? I couldn't do it. And it was, I quite literally could have tears right now if I, you know what I mean? In fact, I think I do. Jeez.
That's why we have the Armagnac here.
It's brutal. 15 years of my life,
Yeah.
And and then I had Aperiam, thank God, right? So we had Fund 1 was basically fully deployed. We started raising Fund 2. And through this whole dark period, I was on Monday partner calls, basically for the fund, and that was my moment of joy. Like, it was like my
back to builder mode,
90 minutes a week,
optimistic, positive. Let's do something that actually matters rather than fight and just this zero-sum game of time lost. And
again, I might have been on a Zoom with me and Eric, and it was just. But I was with a person who wasn't making more money if I failed than if I succeeded, because many of my board meetings and my Zoom calls were just filled with people that were making money off the failure of this business, because they got to do restructuring, they got to recapitalize the business, they were playing for the downside. Yeah. And I was just like, oh, just thank God. I think I'm that and having a place upstate, during COVID may have been the only two things that allowed me to get to the other side, and an amazing wife and amazing children and a wonderful dog. And then sort of, got out, did not pay attention to the business except as people forced me to, if that makes sense. One of my survival mechanisms was to be like, I'm forward looking, worlds lived out of the windshield, not the rear view. And obviously, unless I was going to sleep. So I was also measuring how many of my sleeping hours were, were sort of focused on this. And then 18 months later, I got a call from the then CEO, and we would check in on occasion. And he said to me, Joe, I've got some really bad news. And by the way, I'd allowed for a recapitalization of the business. I felt very much like a Solomon's, King Solomon, not to be, weird about it, but it was like you get to choose whether you're going to keep your equity and fight, or you're going to give up your equity and, give it to the company in order for the company to survive. And I was like, there's only one move there: give it to the company and let it live, and fine, they'll take the equity, but the brand and the people and the whole thing will continue. And then 18 months later, this guy calls and says, "I've got some really bad news." And I said, "What?" And he said, "Well, we're going to shut down the company tomorrow. We're bankruptcy." And I was like, what? And
that came like.
Oh, by the way,
like
so the
that.
company. By the way,
because I went through the acquisition, like there was.
By the way, the company was profitable and growing at the end of my tenure, and the company was profitable and growing at the time it went bankrupt. So it's insane. This was a financial engineering nightmare. So but despite all of the hostility, and despite all of this, the company was working. So, do people tell the right story in the press? The press is insane. The press is insane. Like I gotta tell you, the Laura O'Reilly thing, I was like, this is the platonic shadows of the platonic shadows told by the wrong people. And so, again, I don't talk about it because it doesn't do anything. Do you know what I mean?
Water under the bridge.
Thanks for providing the.
I'm very happy to bring back all of those happy memories for you.
The forum for it.
We really need that bottle of Armagnac for sure.
But truly amazing. And so I learned so much about the what does my wife say? Like, don't have a board of a bunch of men is another good lesson. So much of it was just ego and personality, and winning in the short term and winning my thing as opposed to winning collectively. And it was a really, really rough set of lessons. But Goldman won. The people that managed the recap, I'm not driven by Schadenfreude, but they did all this work and put in money, and then realized they had to run an ad tech business. And then 18 months later, they ended up fighting with themselves. So this, I live by cliches, I think, at this point. But I think the scorpions killed the frog, right? Like, I was clearly the frog in the story. And then the scorpions turned on each other. And so they couldn't get to resolution. They had exit opportunities that ultimately required everybody to say yes. The same people that were sort of on the bubble as to whether they were on the private equity side or whether they were on the junior equity side ultimately said that they weren't going to align with the new acquisition 18 months after I'd left. And Goldman ultimately said, guys, we're calling the ball. And Goldman was over collateralized, so they knew they were going to get all their money back, and they were charging wonderful interest rates this whole time. And then they ran an auction process to sell off the pieces after firing everybody and turning off all the bidders and leaving on whole all of the suppliers all at once. So it was a terrible end to a wonderful run. Is that too much?
Careful who you let in the boardroom. That's the
one bad apple.
That
is absolutely it. Yeah. So what do I think a lot about? I do think a lot about, again, to that point, don't be that. Like, I want to be the best investor. I want to be the best entity on a company's cap table. Do you know what I mean? And most VCs, if you can get to do no harm, you've done a good job, right? If you can get to an investor that can make some are even too eager, right? Some are on the other side, and it's just like, oh, go meet with Sally and Fred, and it's like, well, Sally and Fred have no interest in this, or it's not relevant, or what have you, and they can sometimes provide opportunities, trying to be helpful, but aren't necessarily well targeted. So I think Eric and I think a lot about obviously Corey and Peter, and I won't spend too much time on sort of the platform arm here, just because I've been talking a lot. But how do you actually be helpful? Right. Yep. So how do you find surgically the right commercial opportunities, the right team, sort of ads? How do you find navigate a corp dev opportunity that's going to be valuable? And if you can do that, then you can take those hard-won lessons and sort of, again, channel them productively, kind of create the right narrative and the right sort of value out of them in one form or fashion. But that was a fun time. Thanks, Matt.
Well, I've got this Serena Williams quote that was written on the walls of my gym in London. A champion is defined not by their wins, but by how they can recover when they fall. Right. So it's not about the fall, because everybody falls.
Yeah.
Some harder than others, but for you, the bounce back was Aperiam, your wife and kids and dogs.
Yep.
The house upstate.
There you go.
That's the way. It's gonna move past it, because you could ruminate this thing forever, and that would eat you from the inside. Hopefully you sleep better now. There's a
totally. I think there's no nothing better than just forward motion, right? Like the only thing you do is create sort of distance and traction, and okay, let's get to the third act here, and make it fun and awesome, and sort of channel it. And so far so good. Like I think the things you just listed have been incredibly motivating. And then my only other thing is, I think I've created a bunch of middle-aged frats at this point. We're empty nest right now, and I'm regressing a little bit in terms of how I'm working out with people a lot. So I've got a lot of accountability partners in my either hitting the Equinox or Lifetime or hot yoga, what have you. Started a rowing club. Our inaugural kickoff is this weekend. Actually, it's unfortunately, while it's 93 today, it's supposed to be 53 and rainy this weekend. But we're going to get out on a quad. Doing a lot of other ship, so saunas and cold plunges. Playing a lot of board games. I'm kind of a dork.
If it wasn't clear yet, he said it. So physical health as well as mental health.
Indeed.
Right? That balance is it's super critical for me. I totally agree with that.
Yes.
You can't think straight if you're not feeling right.
But you're a aggressive downhill skier, and you're an extreme sports guy.
The problem is that when I go to Canada for the first time this year, there's no freaking snow.
I'm sorry.
Come on.
It's Trump.
I thought better of
it's
you
tariffs.
Right. I think it's a good place to end it.
I couldn't imagine what else we'd talk about.
I know you're never short of stories and talking points. Joe, it's been a real pleasure.
Matt, thank you for this.
Share all of that history with us and all of those advices. So thank you very much for that.
I appreciate this. Thank you.
And I'm looking forward to the next one.
Avec, Matt.